Lightning tore the heavens apart as ancient treasures awakened, and in a battlefield soaked with blood and soulfire, life and death were decided in the blink of an eye. A sacred bird descended in azure flames, nascent souls were crushed without mercy, and illusion gave way to lethal truth. While armies clashed and cultivators fell one by one, a single figure moved through the chaos unseen, stealing fate itself from the hands of destiny. When the ancient lanterns were extinguished and divine fire lost its master, the tide of war turned in an instant, revealing that the most terrifying weapon on the battlefield was not brute force, but a perfectly timed strike from the shadows. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Divine Devilbane Lightning. The black-robed woman cried out in alarm. Just as she was about to retaliate in furious rage after her attack had been repelled, she suddenly saw lightning erupting from Han Li's body. Crackling thunder wove itself into a vast net, surging toward her with terrifying speed. Horror instantly flooded her face. Without hesitation, her body dissolved into drifting smoke as she shot backward, desperately avoiding the lightning as if it were death itself. Han Li's expression remained utterly indifferent. With a single beat of his wings, his figure blurred and vanished from sight. The moment she witnessed this, the black-robed woman's heart sank. She immediately recalled the rumors surrounding Han Li. Without wasting a breath, she hastily formed incantation seals. Her smoky form rippled violently, then split apart into 8 identical figures standing shoulder to shoulder. Each clone appeared lifelike, radiating its own aura. In the next instant, they scattered in all directions, streaking away as trails of yellow light. It was impossible to tell which was real. A flash of silver light pierced the air. Han Li reappeared at the exact spot where the woman had originally stood, thunder echoing behind him. His gaze calmly swept across the scattered yellow streaks. A faint sneer tugged at the corner of his lips. Spiritual power surged into his eyes. A deep blue radiance blossomed within his pupils as the bright sight spirit eyes activated. Raising his head, Han Li peered into the distance. The silhouettes concealed within the yellow light were dim and hollow, their spiritual chi sparse and unstable. All of them were fakes. Suddenly, Han Li's heart jolted. He spun his gaze around only to discover a nearly imperceptible thread of smoke silently approaching from behind him. The woman had used illusion to divert his attention, choosing not to flee, but instead to exploit the opening and launch a surprise attack. Her courage and decisiveness were extraordinary. Without the bright sight spirit eyes, Han Li would never have detected her presence. Her concealment techniques were no inferior to Silvermoon's. Even spiritual sense alone could not trace her. A chill ran through Han Li's mind. Without revealing any reaction, he abruptly turned and flew straight toward the gigantic ape, as though he had completely abandoned the pursuit. The faint thread of smoke closed in to within 10 meters of him. It paused. In the next breath, the woman's figure suddenly materialized. A blade of yellow light no longer than an inch flashed from her hand, stabbing straight toward Han Li's back, aimed precisely at his heart. If the strike landed, his body would undoubtedly be obliterated. But at the instant she moved, Han Li whirled around in a blur. His eyes locked onto her without mercy. He opened his mouth. A beam of golden light burst forth. Ah! The black-robed woman's face turned deathly pale. She frantically tried to evade, but at such close range, escape was impossible. Bang! A bolt of golden lightning shot from Han Li's mouth, slamming directly into her shoulder. The air filled with the acrid scent of scorched flesh. Her scream tore through the sky as she fell helplessly downward. Thunder roared as Han Li vanished once more. In the next instant, he reappeared behind her, one hand enveloped in faint blue flames. With chilling calm, he gently pressed it against her neck. Whoosh! A dense layer of blue ice surged outward, instantly encasing her entire body. All sensation vanished except for bone-deep cold. Wrapped in ice, she continued to plummet from the heavens. Han Li hovered motionlessly in mid-air, lightning already coiled within his grasp. With a flick of his wrist, he released it, ensnaring the frozen woman in a net of crackling thunder. A malicious glint flashed through his eyes. Golden light erupted around her icy form. Explosions rang out in rapid succession. In the blink of an eye, the black-robed woman shattered into countless specks of icy light, vanishing without leaving a trace. Only one thing remained within the lightning net: her nascent soul. Its face was pale to the extreme, trembling in absolute terror before the divine Devilbane lightning. Han Li glanced at it coldly. Just as he was about to annihilate it, the nascent soul shrieked in panic. "You cannot kill me. I am the Tao companion of the sifting Yin sect, master of the Jin Empire. If you destroy me, my sect will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Tao companion of the sifting Yin sect master. Hanli studied the nascent soul in silence. Then unexpectedly, he loosened his grip on the lightning and turned away. Stunned, the woman's nascent soul hesitated, then surged forward through the opening, her mind already boiling with venomous thoughts of revenge. But when she had barely fled 30 meters, the lightning net suddenly contracted. Thunder roared. The nascent soul was crushed within the net and reduced to ashes. "Since I've already destroyed your body," Han Li muttered with a helpless sigh, "how could I possibly leave you a chance for revenge?" He exhaled softly, then turned his gaze back toward the enormous ape. Although the entire exchange seemed intricate, everything had transpired within the span of a single breath. By the time the black-robed woman fell into mortal peril, the withered old spell warrior was already streaking toward her in a beam of golden light. At that critical moment, an eerie pink glow blossomed nearby, rapidly expanding into a massive cloud that swallowed the old spell warrior whole. Booming explosions echoed within the mist. Moments later, the pink cloud scattered. The old man emerged, his face ashen eyes burning with rage as he stared at the dispersing haze. He could already imagine the fury of the sifting Yin sect master upon learning of his Tao companion's death. Clenching his teeth, he glared venomously toward Han Li and whoever had dared to block him. Soft laughter drifted from the fading pink mist. A handsome youth with gentle features stepped forth. It was Devil Cloudpart of the Harmonious Bond sect. Chuckling, Devil Cloudpart glanced at Han Li. "Fellow Taoist Han, since I've assisted you this time, our debt is settled." Han Li, having just returned from killing the black-robed woman, replied calmly, "It was mere chance that I freed you. I never sought repayment. More importantly, Divine Sage Ju is not an opponent the two of us can handle, and he is far from alone." As he spoke, Han Li swept his gaze past the withered old man. Beyond the black-robed spell, warriors desperately restraining the giant ape. An entire army of spell warriors was flying in from the horizon. Even Devil Cloudpart's expression shifted upon seeing their overwhelming numbers. Earlier, Han Li had rescued Devil Cloudpart from the formation barrier using 2 lightning beads by sheer luck. Originally, he had planned to fight alongside him, but the sudden release of massive numbers of copper-armored corpses by the sifting Yin sect forced Han Li to change his plans. It was then that he released the Weeping Soul Beast, curious to see its power now that the Weeping Soul Pearl had been fully refined. The result shocked him. The moment it appeared, it stirred an uproar, greedily devouring the refined corpses around it with terrifying enthusiasm. While Han Li already knew of its ability to consume demon and ghost souls, it was clear that its strange powers had evolved alongside its physical form. A surprise, yet a most welcome one. Now faced with such a vast army of spell warriors, Han Li and Devil Cloudpart exchanged glances, both harboring thoughts of retreat. However, the Weeping Soul Beast was still rampaging among the refined corpses, and Han Li was unwilling to abandon it. Just as he prepared to use the Weeping Soul Pearl to call it back, booming laughter rang out from behind him. "Fear not, fellow Taoist Han. Since you've unleashed this great beast to deal with the refined corpses, we'll help you deal with the spell warriors." Han Li's heart stirred. He turned quickly. 100 meters away stood Long Han leading a squad of cultivators. Han Li was overjoyed. No wonder the spell warriors had hesitated to launch an all-out assault. They had already noticed reinforcements approaching. When Long Han saw Han Li's demon form, a flicker of astonishment crossed his face, but he immediately suppressed it. Now was not the time for questions. Both sides faced each other across the battlefield. After endless bloodshed, the moment of decisive battle had finally arrived. Victories and defeats had been claimed on both sides, and countless lives had been lost. This was no mere sparring. Those who fell perished. Those who survived had no choice but to fight on, exhausted and bloodied. Long Han had dispatched other cultivators to keep Tianzhong occupied, freeing his Tao companion Feng Bing for a separate confrontation. Only when fighting together could they unleash their true power. Now that matters had reached this stage, Long Han had nothing left to say to the withered old spell warrior. He calmly raised his arm. The cultivators he had preserved until now, true elites, immediately summoned their magic treasures. Brilliant light erupted as they launched their attack. The opposing spell warriors were no ordinary foes. Spiritual chi surged violently as they countered. In that instant, the final clash between the two armies was about to begin. Although the spell warriors possessed one additional late-stage nascent soul cultivator, with Devil Cloudpart and 4 mid-stage nascent soul cultivators present, restraining him would not be impossible. Hanley prepared to join the assault against the withered old man's forces. But the moment his gaze shifted toward the sacred bird, his expression changed drastically. The 7 great truths cultivators and the yin-yang devils were barely able to withstand the Mulan sacred bird. However, after only a short time had passed, they gradually found themselves falling into a disadvantage. The 2 yin-yang devils were still holding on relatively well. They continuously released yin winds and undead chi, barely managing to ward off the raging azure flames. In contrast, the 7 great truths cultivators were reaching the limits of their endurance. Their magic power was rapidly depleting, and they could no longer sustain the battle. Among them, 2 elderly cultivators appeared particularly strained. One was a red-faced old man, whose spiritual radiance had dimmed considerably. The other was a pale-faced elder white chi, visibly trembling around his nose and mouth. It was clear that both were forcibly pushing beyond their limits through secret techniques. Hanley frowned slightly. His gaze swept over the fallen cultivators scattered across the battlefield before shifting toward the spell warrior standing guard near the ancient lanterns. Watch over the weeping soul beast. Do not let anything happen to it. If it encounters danger, withdraw it immediately. I'm going to deal with the ancient lanterns, Hanley transmitted soundlessly. As he spoke, he casually tossed the weeping soul pearl behind him. A faint white flash flickered, and the pearl vanished without a trace. Yes, master. Please be careful. That peacock's abilities are truly terrifying. Silvermoon's worried voice rang out from behind him. Hanley calmly nodded. Seeing that no one nearby paid him any attention, his figure blurred and disappeared from sight. He activated the nameless chi restraining technique to conceal himself. Although his concealment methods were far inferior to Silvermoon's, this chi restraining art was capable of rivaling her techniques in effect. Having cultivated it to its peak, Hanley could not only completely erase the spiritual chi fluctuations from his body, but also forcibly suppress his own aura. At this moment, he was concealing himself not only from spell warrior Le, but even from the unfathomably profound Mulan sacred bird itself. In the distance, spell warrior Le revealed a faint trace of concern upon seeing the cultivators entangled with the shriveled old man. Though she continued guarding the ancient lanterns, she turned toward the massive azure bird and called out to it in an ancient tongue. Upon hearing her plea, the Mulan sacred bird paused mid-air and turned its head to glance at the battle involving the shriveled old man. A trace of disdain flickered in its eyes. Immediately afterward, it turned back and unleashed several blazing spheres of azure flame into the sky, forcing the 7 great truths cultivators into confusion and retreat. Letting out a clear, resounding cry, the bird spread its wings and ascended into the heavens. After circling once in the air, it faced the direction of the shriveled old man's battlefield. With a powerful tremor of its wings, countless azure feathers rained down from its body. In flashes of brilliant light, each feather transformed into a foot-long azure firebird. Without requiring any command, hundreds of these phantom firebirds let out piercing cries and surged forward, streaking toward the battlefield like a blazing tide. At this sight, spell warrior Lu finally felt reassured. With these fire phantoms joining the fray, victory was only a matter of time. At that very moment, a series of thunderous explosions suddenly erupted from the heart of the battlefield. Spell warrior Li turned in surprise toward the source of the noise. At the same time, Han Li, who was carefully and silently closing in on her, was equally startled. At the very center of the battlefield, a crucial confrontation was unfolding. The myriad soul formation formed from the ghostly mist conjured by several dozen ghost spirit sect disciples had finally come to a halt, floating motionlessly in mid-air. Blocking its path was an army of hollow spirit beasts, controlled by several Mulan sages, along with a towering stone giant. After defeating the Heavenly South cultivators who had previously besieged it, the stone giant was redirected under the Mulan sages' command to intercept the myriad soul formation. The explosions heard earlier were caused by the stone giant slamming its massive palm toward the ghostly mist. Before its hand even struck, countless boulders cascaded down from its arm. No matter how confident the ghost spirit sect disciples were in their formation, they dared not receive such a blow head-on. With a sharp hiss, the ghost mist swiftly dodged aside, retreating a full 100 meters before coming to a stop. Seeing this, both the Heavenly South cultivators and the Mulan spell warriors realized that the battle had reached a critical turning point. The Ghost Spirit Sect elder in charge of the formation immediately made a ruthless decision to activate the formation's killing maneuver regardless of the cost. Before the stone giant could continue its pursuit, a gloomy incantation echoed from within the ghost mist. Ghostly wails pierced the air as a pillar of crimson light shot skyward. The black mist followed as if infected by the crimson glow, gradually turning blood red as the chanting intensified. The two Mulan sages standing atop the stone giant's shoulders stared in bewilderment. Moments later, the chanting abruptly ceased. The crimson mist churned violently before dozens of multicolored streaks of light shot out. From it at top speed, the Ghost Spirit Sect cultivators retreating from the formation. The two Mulan sages were momentarily at a loss. At that instant, the abandoned crimson mist suddenly came alive. Tentacles of varying sizes intermittently emerged from its depths, writhing wildly as the core of the mist rapidly contracted. The Ghost Spirit Sect elder, having retreated some 20 meters, turned back to watch. His gaze was fixed firmly on the crimson mist as he thought inwardly. After absorbing so much blood essence from the spell warriors and the voluntary blood sacrifices, it must succeed. Under his tense watch, the crimson mist shrank to less than half its original size, then began to violently convulse. Seeing this, the two Mulan sages immediately commanded the stone giant to stomp down with all its might. Suddenly, sinister yellow yin winds erupted, chilling the surroundings to the bone and obscuring the ground from sight. Even the stone giant hesitated briefly. By the time visibility returned, the Mulan spell warriors were shocked to see yellow yin winds swirling densely around the crimson mist. In the next instant, the winds were torn apart as a crimson silhouette burst forth. When the two Mulan sages saw its form, their breaths turned cold. It was a Bloodvile ghost towering over 30 meters tall. Its demonic head bore two curved horns and a pair of glistening razor-sharp fangs. A long ponytail-like mass trailed behind it. Its arms resembled carved wood, ending in dagger-like claws, and translucent scales shimmered across its limbs. Though vile ghosts were said to be enormous, this one was still several times smaller than the stone giant. Yet it showed not the slightest fear. Instead, it let out a shrill scream, glaring at the giant with icy malice. Lowering its head, it shot forward like an arrow, crashing into the stone giant's leg. Its claws slashed out instantly, carving away a massive chunk of stone. The Mulan sages reacted in alarm. They commanded the stone giant to retaliate. Enormous fists crashed down at lightning speed, smashing the Bloodvile ghost and sending it flying over 30 meters away. Half of its head was blown apart, but the ghost rose to its feet as if nothing had happened. In a flash of crimson light, its head regenerated, and it charged forward once again. Furious and alarmed, the two sages ordered the hollow spirit beasts to attack and unleashed their own magic treasures to assist the stone giant. Meanwhile, the Ghost Spirit Sect cultivators, who had fled earlier, immediately turned back, rejoining the battle. Explosions rang out continuously as crimson light flashed again and again across the battlefield. Spell warrior Lu frowned slightly as she observed the scene in silence. As a Mulan sage, she was well aware of the stone giant's terrifying might. That the Heavenly South cultivators could contend with it surprised her, but not enough to truly worry her. So long as the stone giant could hold on a little longer, she could summon the Mulan sacred bird to sweep them away and decide the outcome of the battle. With that thought, she glanced toward the colossal azure bird nearby. As if sensing the decisive moment, the Mulan sacred bird unleashed the full force of its fire spirit chi. In an instant, a 300-meter-wide region was engulfed in a vast azure sea of flames. With a single sweep of its wings, it split the 7 great truths cultivators from the yin-yang devils. The sea of fire below divided in two, isolating the 2 devils from one another. With the devils neutralized, the sacred bird concentrated the majority of its attacks on the 7 great truths cultivators. Unable to endure any longer, the 7 elders soon found their lives hanging by a thread. Spell warrior Li felt deep satisfaction at the sight. Turning back to the ancient lanterns, she saw that they were still half filled with oil. Her heart finally settled. Suddenly her brows twitched and her eyes narrowed. In a swift motion, she drew a spark of flame from one of the lanterns. With a casual wave of her hand, it vanished. A flash of azure light erupted 100 meters away, followed by a startled cry. A figure appeared, his body glittering with azure radiance, flames tightly wrapped around him. Spell warrior Li immediately formed an incantation seal. The flames surrounding the azure barrier violently combusted. A miserable scream echoed through the air. In the next instant, the figure was reduced to ashes. To think you would dare conceal yourself near the bright origin lanterns. You truly are courting death, the woman muttered coldly, not even bothering to carefully inspect the result. It was enough for her to know that the victim was a cultivator from Heavenly South. Ever since she had ignited the ancient lanterns, 6 cultivators had already attempted to approach them one after another. After all, the enormous sacred bird only came into existence once the lanterns were summoned, and they had continued burning ever since. With a single glance, it was obvious that something extraordinary lay within them. Naturally, cultivators proficient in concealment techniques attempted to extinguish the lantern flames. Not a single one succeeded. All of them had been incinerated by her flames. Several 100 meters away, Han Li witnessed the nameless cultivator being effortlessly erased. His heart shuddered, and he immediately halted his slow advance. Though the woman had merely muttered to herself, Han Li heard every word clearly with his astonishing spiritual sense. His gaze shifted toward the ancient lanterns hovering nearby. Rubbing his chin, he pondered in silence. These lanterns were far from ordinary. Not only could they summon that demonic bird, but they were also capable of seeing through concealment techniques. This made the situation exceedingly troublesome. Han Li's expression fluctuated for a long moment before his eyes sharpened, having finally reached a decision. He slapped his storage pouch and withdrew several items. Then with a faint smile, he glanced at the spirit beast pouches hanging at his waist. A short while later, spell warrior Le became noticeably more vigilant. Sitting cross-legged before the ancient lanterns, a faint lotus mirage shimmered around her body. She stared intently at the lanterns, merging her spiritual sense with them, extending her perception to cover everything within a 100-meter radius. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared 100 meters away. Dozens of towering apes emerged, their imposing figures instantly drawing her attention. Behind them stood another full row of identical apes. In unison, they raised their arms, unleashing dozens of beams of light. "Puppets," spell warrior Li exclaimed in shock. Soon after, she frowned when she realized how exquisitely crafted they were. She cautiously scanned her surroundings, yet failed to discover the one controlling them. She paid little heed to the incoming light beams. With a single incantation, seal the lotus mirage flickered effortlessly, blocking the attacks. Then her figure blurred as she reached out and plucked an ember of flame from one of the lanterns. This time, however, she did not release it immediately. The ember hovered quietly in her palm as she stared at the lanterns, alert for any abnormal change. Moments later, her expression shifted. She opened her mouth and exhaled a breath of spiritual chi onto the flame. The ember flared with brilliant azure light, then vanished without a trace. She turned her head sharply toward an area 100 meters away. With a soft pop, a silhouette appeared, shrouded in azure light. Spell warrior Li formed another incantation seal. The flames detonated instantly, and a cold, satisfied smile appeared on her lips. Why is it still alive?" Her smile froze. The figure was not instantly reduced to ash like the previous cultivators, nor did it struggle in the flames. Alarmed, she hastily examined it. No, it isn't a person at all. It's a puppet. The silhouette had the same outline as Han Li, but its expression was rigid and lifeless. Moreover, it appeared completely unaffected by the raging azure flames. Not good. Realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. She instantly turned her head toward the ancient lanterns, re-examining her surroundings with her spiritual sense. At the same time, a figure appeared 60 meters away in a flash of azure light. Thunder rang out, and the figure vanished again in a blink. Spell warrior Lu's face twisted in fury. She hastily formed incantation seals with both hands, striking the lanterns with successive spell seals. But she was too late. Lightning flashed beside the ancient lanterns. A youth appeared out of thin air. In the next instant, a massive black-red hand manifested in mid-air, rapidly expanding to 3 meters in size before viciously swiping at the ancient lanterns. He recognizes the main lantern. Only the caster could know which one is real. Even a late-stage nascent soul cultivator shouldn't be able to see through them. Shock shook spell warrior Lo to her core. At such close range, her spell seals and the massive hand struck the ancient lantern at nearly the same moment. The lantern flared with life beginning to transform, but before it could complete the process, the giant hand seized it. Black yin flames erupted, attempting to annihilate it entirely. Almost simultaneously, the other 8 lanterns trembled violently. In flickers of light, they vanished one after another, dissolving into wisps of smoke. No, Spell Warrior Lu's face went deathly pale. Gritting her teeth, she raised both hands, conjuring a massive lotus mirage to envelop the black hand in an attempt to reclaim the lantern. But her move had been anticipated. With the lantern already in its grasp, the giant hand immediately withdrew without hesitation. A cold snort echoed. Thunder rang out once more. Both the black-red hand and the silhouette vanished. In the next moment, the silhouette reappeared beside the puppet still trapped in azure light, the ancient lantern firmly in hand. Hanli had exploited the element of surprise to its fullest. "You will not escape." Spell Warrior Li glanced in panic toward the azure bird, only to see that the Mulan sacred bird had not yet vanished. Steeling her resolve, she shouted sharply and enveloped herself in azure light, transforming into a clear wind as she gave chase. Han Li's expression darkened. White light flashed from his hands as he stowed the ancient lantern into his storage pouch. He unfolded his wings and disappeared, reappearing 100 meters away. At the same instant, Spell Warrior Li arrived at his previous location, pursuing him as a streak of wind. Han Li's eyes flickered. He suddenly formed a hand seal and uttered a single word: "Explode." The lightning bead hidden within the puppet's mouth detonated. Golden lightning and azure flames intertwined in a violent eruption. More than half of the puppet disintegrated instantly, and Spell Warrior Lu, caught nearby, was engulfed by the blast. Her lotus mirage flared to life, instinctively shielding its master. Each lotus petal glowed brilliantly, rigidly blocking the destructive force. Even so, the lightning bead's power was terrifying. Though she suffered no serious injuries, Spell Warrior Lu was blasted backward over 10 meters. Her wind movement technique forcibly disrupted. Hanli let out a soft sigh. Although the lightning bead had yet to reach its full potential, he did not linger. With another flash, he vanished into the distance. By the time Spell Warrior Lu steadied herself, Han Li was already more than 300 meters away. Grinding her teeth, she prepared to continue the pursuit. Suddenly, the remaining half of the shattered puppet emitted a monstrous roar. Having already suffered from it once, Spell Warrior Lu hurriedly turned her gaze, only to see it glowing with azure light. Moments later, the remnants burst apart, scattering into swarms of tricolored beetles. Forced to halt, she hastily summoned a white lotus to shield herself. Instantly, the beetles condensed, forming several massive shields that blocked her path. Each time she attempted to activate her wind movement technique, waves of attacks interrupted her casting. In a fury, she unleashed a barrage of spirit techniques, but shockingly none were effective. At that moment, her eyes widened in disbelief. They resemble gold-devouring beetles. Apart from the black specks on their shells, they were nearly identical. Startled, she immediately reached for a wood-attributed spirit treasure from her storage pouch to capture them. But before she could act, the beetles scattered with a loud buzz, vanishing in all directions. Her expression shifted repeatedly between shock and rage. She hurriedly looked into the distance. At some unknown moment, Han Li had activated a concealment technique and disappeared without leaving a trace. Spell Warrior Li hovered motionlessly in mid-air, her complexion alternating between red and white, utterly at a loss. At that same moment, the Mulan sacred bird released an azure fireball, shattering the protective treasure of one of the 7 Great Truths cultivators. Just as it rejoiced and prepared to tear the cultivator apart with its talons, it suddenly felt its spiritual power drain violently from its body. Startled, the bird failed to land the killing blow. It hastily turned its head, only to discover that the ancient lantern had vanished. The massive bird shrieked in panic. Its body rapidly shrank, having instantly lost its ability to control fire spirit chi. The vast sea of azure flames raged briefly before dissipating entirely, leaving the 7 Great Truths cultivators staring in stunned disbelief. The yin-yang devils transformed into a streak of green wind the moment they were freed, launching a fierce assault on the weakened bird. By then, the sacred bird had already shrunk to only a meter in length. Its eyes burned with resentment as it stared at the approaching devils, showing no intention of dodging. Before the twin devils could strike, the bird exploded. It shattered into countless specks of azure light that quickly faded away. The yin-yang devils halted, standing silently in the sky. How How did this happen? One of the old men asked in disbelief, joy mingled with exhaustion. His magic power was nearly depleted, and he was on the verge of collapse. Look over there, the leading old man said, letting out a long sigh. It seems something went wrong with the treasure they used to summon the demon bird. The ancient lantern. It's gone. He gazed at the empty space where the lanterns once floated, relief washing over his face. It felt as though he had been standing at the very edge of death, only a single step away from calamity.